Hey, I'm Kev Kerr, Mr. Kerr, and welcome to Power Oversteer, the World Motorsport Show on the ElusiveKev channel. And in today's episode, we are reviewing the two races that happened last weekend in Toronto, the IndyCar round, the Honda Indy Toronto, and it saw two different kinds of standing starts. One that didn't really work, and one that was pretty good. It was pretty good, and it was good to see standing starts in the IndyCar series for the first time, and the first time in American open wheel racing since the Champ Car series in 2007. And firstly, I do have to apologise for this Power Oversteer being a bit late, this review, and I kind of forgot to review it earlier. I was busy concentrating on the videos I had to make for this channel, but yeah, now I've got some time and now I can actually review the races there in Toronto. But the Toronto races, though, they were very interesting. We saw the reigning champ get into all kinds of trouble during the races. We also saw someone looking like they're losing their willpower for the title, and we also saw the Iceman continue his hot streak. And firstly, as we always do in these, we do the race recap. So the race recap of the two races that happened in Toronto, two 85 lap races around the less than 2 mile course, about a minute long. So they're very long races as well, with many safety cars and caution periods chucked into the mix. You've got the walls coming at you in the street course, of course. You also got different surface types with concrete on some corners, and you got asphalt there as well, so you could lose kind of grip there as well with the concrete there. So let's firstly talk about the first race, of course, and there was some trouble there at the start. It didn't take long to get the caution out. The first start was aborted. It was meant to be a standing start, but Joseph Newgarden in the number 67 Sarah Fisher Hartman racing machine had problems with his anti-stall system. He was just trundled around. The car wouldn't stop, it wouldn't go either. So yeah, he had to start a couple of laps down on the race, because once it goes to caution on the aborted start, that's when the race begins. But it did get going, and at the front was Dario Franchitti. He had started from the pole and he was doing very well on the first stint until his red tyres started to wear out a bit, and you saw Sebastian Bourdais in the Dragon racing machine. Great to see him up there this weekend. And Will Power in his Penske machine start to hassle him a bit, and on lap 20 Bourdais got past into turn 5, diving down Franchitti's inside with Will Power following suit. And the race, it was very interesting with pit stops going there. You saw good strategy, and it looked like it was maybe Bourdais' day at times, maybe Will Power's day, maybe even Scott Dixon as well throwing himself into the mix with good strategy from the Ganassi team. But then we saw some cautions fly. On lap 35 we saw Graham Rahal and Tristan Volche get tangled together in turn 4. Turn 3 is a sharp right hander, and then it follows a left hand kink. You can't really get two cars round there, and Rahal had covered the outside there. He kind of covered the line, and Volche still stuck his nose in there, and Rahal spun round, and Volche got a drive-through penalty for his troubles. Then on lap 65, just around the last pit stops, we saw trouble down the field. We saw trouble for Takuma Sato, for Justin Wilson, not Takuma Sato, for Ryan Briscoe, for Justin Wilson and for Charlie Kimball. Justin Wilson got a good run on Charlie Kimball, then dived from a bit too far back down the inside of the Ganassi drivers inside into turn 5. That sent Kimball into the wall, it sent Wilson into some trouble, and Briscoe got caught up behind the both of them, went into the wall as well. We also saw Sebastian Zavejo that later under the caution come in a bit too quick and went into the side of Kimball as well, to complete a miserable few seconds for Kimball there. But the downside of this incident was that Justin Wilson got a drive-through penalty for this, and Ryan Briscoe in the Panther racing machine number 4, he actually went into the wall and he was still holding the steering wheel, and with the kick back through the steering wheel it kind of fractured his right wrist, so he went back to have surgery on that day, and tomorrow he was watching, or the next day he was watching the second race from the sidelines. But this set up a nice finale though, and we saw some aggressive driving, especially in the pack as well. But there was more aggressive driving at the front on these restarts. We saw Willpower try and go down the inside of Scott Dixon into turn 3 after this penultimate restart. Then we saw an incident right at the end of the race around lap 80 when Ax Tagiani trying to get past, I think, Mike Conway, sorry, if I remember correctly, and he spun the car around in turn 1. And it was the end of a good run for Ax Tagiani, a much needed good run in the top 10, but that dropped him back and eventually would finish 17th. On this restart though, we saw Willpower try and get past Dale Franchitti into turn 3, and this time Willpower did not get away with it. He braked a bit too late and went into the tyre wall, would only be classified in 15th place as he crashed on the last lap. But as everyone went round, we saw Scott Dixon take the Czechoslovakia to take his second win on the trot from Sebastian Bourdais' first podium in the Dragon Racing machine, and Dragon Racing's first podium, Dale Franchitti in 3rd, Marco Andretti 4th, Tony Kanaan in 5th, Helio Castroneves, great points for the championship leader in 6th, Mike Conway, great run from him from 20th on the grid to 7th, James Hinchcliffe in 8th, good top 10 for the home star kid, Simon Pageau in 9th, Simona Di Silvestro in 10th, another good run from her, Justin Wilson 11th, James Jakes 12th, Ed Carpenter in 13th, good run for Ed, who's still trying to get much better on these street and road courses, EJ Viso 14th, Willpower 15th, Sebastian Vettel 16th, Ax Tagiani 17th, Ryan Hunter-Ray in 18th, way down there, Tristan Volte 19th, Graham Earl 20th, Charlie Kimber 21st, Ryan Briscoe 22nd, Joseph Newgarden in 23rd, and Takuma Sato out in 24th and last with a mechanical issue early in the race. So that were the standings for race 1. We did have some controversy after race 1 when Dario Franchitti was given a penalty for kind of blocking Willpower on that last restart, but in the end the stewards saw more angles and saw that he wasn't really blocking, so they rescinded the penalty. But it was a hilarious first race podium as well when Sebastian Bourdais did drop his trophy as well, and if you YouTube it you can see his face after he dropped it. It looked like a kid had dropped his ice cream on a hot summer's day just like today. But let's look at race 2 then. And race 2, not as much happened in the early parts here, but then it really did get exciting near the end. But at the start it was trouble for James Hinchcliffe. He had a stuck throttle. He had to go into the pits and get that all changed, and he was 3 laps down once he got going. But we did have a standing start to make up for the aborted one on the Saturday on race 1, and it all went well apart for Ed Carpenter, who had got a slow getaway at the back in his 22nd grid slot there. And he also saw, in place of Ryan Briscoe in that number 4 Panther racing machine, Carlos Munoz, who was runner-up in the Indy 500 this year, a very fast kid and leader of the Indy Lights Championship, which is the kind of GP2 for IndyCar. But it was a very steady first few laps. We didn't see much passing until Tony Kanaan, his tyres went off near the end of his first stint, and then we saw him come in 16 laps later. He came in very early for his second stop. Unfortunately for Kanaan, though, his race would end a couple of laps later on that 35 when he hit the wall in the final corner, bent the right rear, and he was out. But we did see some good racing anyway. We did see Scott Dixon lead for almost the whole of the race actually. He led the first part of the race and no one really did touch him this race. Scott Dixon was in a race by himself. It was amazing. But also on that first lap at the start, behind him, once he was getting away, we saw Helio Castroneves in second get hit by Dario Franchitti from behind, and then Willpower came in on the side here and kind of tapped Dario Franchitti. That damaged his front wing, so on the first lap Franchitti had to change from his red tyres to the blacks for the rest of the race and change his front wing as well, so he was way near the back. And so after that, we saw Franchitti try and get his way up the order from the back, and he did a great job as well. Had did Mike Conway at the start. His experience in GB2 proved a bit valuable here, as from his 23rd start position, he was already up to 15th by the end of the first lap. But there wasn't much in the way of cautions going on for most of this race. It took until lap 65 to see the first caution, when James Jakes went into the wall in turn 5, just cut the curve too much it seemed, and landed on a bump which bumped the steering wheel out of his hands, and so he went straight into the wall, and that's what he said in the interview afterwards. And once it went green again, then we saw some frantic battling behind. We also saw Tristan Volti actually before the James Jakes incident on lap 55. He lost part of his front wing, as he did kind of what Tony Kanaan did on Scott Dixon at Pocono. He kind of got out of the draft a bit too late, damaged the front end fence, as they call it in America, or the end plate as you would call it in F1. And so that was by the side of the road, and he pitted immediately for his last stop. But then we saw drama in the last 5 laps. Most of the drama happened in the last 5 laps. On lap 81, Ed Carpenter, who was running near the back anyway after that slow start, he crashed in turn 5 as well, and it looked similar to James Jakes, where he just took too much curve, got the car a bit airborne, landed and lost control and understeered into the wall. And after that restart, then we saw on lap 84, when the race restarted on the penultimate lap, or on the last lap I think, you saw Sebastian Bourdais make a great start from 4th, go round the outside of Will Power for 3rd, but Will Power in turn 1 lost it on the X. He's correcting some oversteer there, and he corrected into Ryan Hunter-Reay, who was on the outside, and so Ryan Hunter-Reay, Will Power got collected in that instance. And then behind them we saw Justin Wilson and Takuma Sato batted in. Takuma Sato just got into the back of Justin Wilson, not actually hitting him, but he just lost his vantage point for the next corner, because it is a bend in turn 2, and so he just went straight into the wall in the back of Ryan Hunter-Reay. And so yeah, those 3 were out: Takuma Sato, Will Power and Ryan Hunter-Reay. And so the race ended under caution with Scott Dixon winning again, a race he dominated from Helio Castroneves. Sebastian Bourdais on the podium again in the Dragon Racing machine. Dario Franchitti in a great 4th after batting was over from last on that end of the first lap. EJ Visa in a strong top 5. Charlie Kimball in 6th. Mike Conway, another top 10. Great finish in 7th, really benefited from that last lap chaos. Justin Wilson in 8th. Marco Andretti in 9th. Alex Tagliani getting that top 10. Great result for the Brian Herter Barracuda Racing Honda. Joseph Newgarden in 11th, making up for the terrible race he had in race 1. Simon Pagenaud, Graham Rahal, Simona Di Silvestro, Sebastian Saveja, Tristan Volche, Carlos Munoz in 17th. Not bad considering that's his first time in the car and first time at a road or street course race in IndyCar. Will Power 18th, Ryan Hunter-Reay 19th, Takuma Sato 20th, James Hinchcliffe 21st, Ed Carpenter 22nd, James Jakes 23rd, and Tony Kanaan, a terrible race for him, in 24th. And that is the race recap of the races at Toronto. Let's now look at the winners and losers from this weekend. So the winners and losers from the Honda Indy Toronto, and it's quite easy to see who they were. Ganassi, Scott Dixon, 2 wins, job done. 3 wins on the trot now, just like Ryan Hunter-Reay last year. He's getting on a roll of wins, bringing himself into championship title contender, and he also won twice. He got up to 32 wins, the highest among present drivers, and he got jumped up to 7th in the all-time list, behind the Unzers of Bobby and Al Unser Jr. of Mario Andretti, Michael Andretti and AJ Foyt, who has the most wins. And this also meant he jumped ahead of Sebastian Bourdais, Dario Franchitti, who he was racing with, and Paul Tracy, the former Canadian favourite, who also had 31 wins. But yeah, Scott Dixon just did what he had to do, and Dario Franchitti 3rd, and especially that 4th in the second race after those troubles on the first lap. And in IndyCar you actually meant to do 2 laps on a compound before you change them. He only did one, but for these double headers, there was a bit of leeway for the tyre compounds. Like if your tyre's damaged, then you can, just do one lap, and that's what that incident for Franchitti fell into. So he could only do one lap on those reds in the second race, and it was a great race for him, and really drags him up into contention for a top 5 place in the championship as well. Charlie Kimball was oh so good, a bit unlucky in the first race, but second race in set for around the Toronto track. He does normally well out. Remember, he got second there last year, and now he's on the edge of the top 10, so looking very good for Chip Ganassi now, and great turnaround, especially after Indy where they were not so impressive, and now they're in their stride, and you really got to look out for the Chip Ganassi cars at the front from now on. Penske, Hero Castroneves did a great job finishing in the top 10 in both races again. Only once he's finished outside of the top 10 this year, at his home race in Sao Paulo. Great consistency from him, and his 8th consecutive race as a championship leader, now the most he's ever done in this championship. And with 6 races left, he's really looking strong at this kind of 2/3 mark of the championship. And even though Scott Dixon's got the momentum now, Castroneves is still gathering the points. It is really going to be interesting to see what these two veterans do to the race to Fontana to the championship end. Hero Castroneves' teammate is Will Power, and Will Power, he had pace. He really did have pace. He really not good at times. And then in the first race he lost his head occasionally with Scott Dixon, and then with Dario Franchitti he just put it in the wall in the last lap. And he could have just settled for 4th. He didn't really need to push too hard. He was just too optimistic with that move, where Franchitti had partially covered the inside lane, and he just went there anyway. Should have just stuck it around the outside. Should have done the old switch back, maybe into turn 5. But no, he was too aggressive, and then in the second race he was just a bit unlucky. He got overtaken by Bourdais, did a super restart, and then he just lost it on the exit trying to run alongside him, and he lost it and went into Ryan Hunter-Reay. And so those are valuable points. If he really wants to be up there in the championship, those are valuable points he's lost. And it's just not working out for him on road and street courses this year. As I said, his best results are on the ovals: 3rd in Milwaukee, 4th in Pocono last time out before this one. And he qualified 6th in Indy. He finished 7th in Texas. His best on a road course is 5th in Alabama and 8th in Detroit. Those are his only top 10 finishes on road and street courses. So just not working out for Will Power this year. And I don't know what he's done to the gods in IndyCar. Being the bridesmaid for the past 3 years, finishing 2nd the past 3 years in the championship, and now this year, you just got to wonder if he's ever going to be challenging for a title again, if his luck's ever going to change. But yeah, he's just so unlucky, and some of it was his fault, as I said, in race 1, but in the second race just unlucky that there was a Hunter-Reay on his outside. So let's talk about Andretti Autosport and Hunter-Reay's dreadful weekend. In the first race, from a couple of pit stops, he had kind of sensor issues with the car, clutch sensor issues, so the car just struggled to get away from the pit stops. Then he ended up in the wall in turn 3 after an aggressive move against EJ Vito, his teammate. And then in the second race, as I said, he got taken out by Will Power when he's running in the top 5. So just not the weekend he needed, especially with Dixon and Castroneves being strong, and he's now 40 points behind Dixon in 3rd place in the championship. That is incredible, considering the way it was when they went into there, and even before Pocono as well, where it didn't work out on Pocono when he got hit by Sato as well. So just not the run Hunter-Reay wanted, and at a bad time in the season, where as you get ready to build momentum for the end of the season, he's losing it, unfortunately. Marco Andretti, 2 top 10 finishes. I think he would be happy with that, especially in the first race. He looked very good in that car. In the second race, less so, but he hung it out and he stuck in there, and he got a top 10. And then that's like the Marco that we saw in the early part of the season, grinding out results when the car wasn't quite there. So that was good to see for Marco Andretti. James Hinchcliffe took the first race, a top 10. Okay race, you know, the car wasn't quite there it seemed, but he still got a top 10. And then in the second race, as I said, problems before the start, stuck throttle. And when after they actually changed the pedal set and all the brakes and stuff, they showed it on the NBC broadcast after about 15 laps. They saw the pedals were working fine then. So it was just strange how the problem occurred just before the start of the race. So unfortunate for him. And he's really going to struggle to hold on to the top 10 place at the moment, it seems, with this kind of up and down form he has. But yeah, it was an up and down weekend for Hinchcliffe. And finally, EJV, so strong top 5 in the second race. And he was strong in the first race, and he just lost pace. He couldn't keep hold of the tyres. But in the second race, they went with a softer setup on the car, softer suspension, it seemed. It was nice on the tyres, and it really worked out. Great top 5 for Viso, who's been much better this year, but has not really got the results that back that up. And I know he's still up there fighting for a top 10 finish. Let's go with Simon Pagenaud now in 5th in the championship now, top 5 again for him. And it was quite a good weekend for the Smith, Hamilton, Peterson, HP Motorsports guy. A top 10 in the first race, just outside it in the second. Car wasn't there all weekend, but you know, a good top 10 in the first one. Tristan Volche, his teammate, 19th and 16th in the first race. He just didn't really have pace, it seemed, round here. Even though at times he looked strong, he was just stuck in the midfield pack. And when you're stuck in the midfield pack fighting, you're burning up the tyres, and then you're trying to save the tyres, and you're losing pace, and as the stint goes on. So yeah, he was just struggling all weekend there. And that move on Savagia getting out the draft too late was a bit of a, I wouldn't say a bad move, but you know, as we saw with Kanan, it's very easy to misjudge that. But that was on an oval. This is on a road and street course where he's trying to do a dummy to the inside and go on the outside, and yeah, it just didn't quite work out for him. So yeah, Volche, just another up and down weekend, or a very down weekend, just like his season has been for the most part now. KV Racing with Tony Kanaan, great top 5 in the first race, good strong qualifying as well. Second race, Kanaan his car fell to pieces, and he literally did fall to pieces when it went into the wall on that 35. So yeah, that was a mystery, but it's good pace generally in the first race, so that's very encouraging for them on the road and street courses. Simona Di Silvestro, his teammate, great top 10 in the first race, looked very strong. And in the second race, looked strong as well. It made a good start, made up 3 places, I believe, on the first lap. But then just fell backwards, just really fell backwards in the middle part of that race. Don't know where her pace went at the end of like her stints, but yeah, it just didn't work out in the second race. Got 14th, and he's just in the top 20 in the championship. I was expected much better from her, but it looks like she's just not getting luck, and at times is struggling with the setup, it seems. Then we got Justin Wilson, Dale Coyne Racing, just outside the top 10 in the first race, where his car looked a bit better than that. But you know, like the strategy didn't quite work out, so yeah, just outside the top 10. And as I said, he had that drive-through as well, so yeah, therefore that ambitious move down the inside of Charlie Kimball when he was on newer tyres and Kimball was on a bit older tyres. But in the second race, good top 10 in 8th, so we expect him to be a bit nearer to the front on these road and street course races. Well, I think he would take that. And his teammate Mike Conway, 2 7th places after qualifying low down the field. Great from Conway, and especially that second race where he was really stuck in the midfield until very late in the race and took advantage of the late cautions and made up places. And in the first race, he showed more pure pace, I believe. And so yeah, great races for him in the top 7, and you know, 4 top 10s even out of the 5 races he's done this year. You can't ask much more than that for Conway, and really showing that he's one of these specialists on these road and street courses now that he doesn't do ovals. He'd be a great ringer for, say, Ed Carpenter as well. I believe he'd be great for that. And Ed Carpenter in the second race, yeah, just slow away and seemed to have problems all race before he crashed it. But in the first race, encouraging pace from him in 13th, not a lap down, if I remember correctly. So yeah, that's very encouraging for Ed, you know, around a minute lap in Toronto, and not to be a lap down, that's very encouraging for him. It shows that he's really improving on these road and street courses. So what teams do we have left? Well, we got Takuma Sato in the AJ Foyt machine, Weekend to Forget, crashed late in the first race, in the second race, and in the first race had mechanical issues as well. And he's on this probation as well after hitting Ryan Hunter's race. So he's got 2 of the 5 races out of the way now without causing any incidents. And yeah, in the second race, that was a strange incident behind Justin Wilson right at the end where he just misjudged it, it seemed, and just went into the wall. Very strange from him. Seth Fisher Hartman racing with Joseph Newgard in 23rd. In the first race, yeah, just that anti-stall problem for him. In the second race, 11th though, good pace. He's again stuck in the midfield. Maybe again showed more pace than, or could have shown more pace than he looked like he had. But yeah, solid 11th for him. Dragon Racing. Let's talk about Sebastian Zaveja first, 16th and 15th. Just looked a bit off it near the back all weekend, but Sebastian Bourdais right up there. He's back. He's alive again. Right up there at the beginning, at the front of the race for second and third. And as with no push to pass in the second race, he had blisters all over hand. He could barely hold on to the steering wheel in the second race, so he couldn't use push to pass. And that. And I'll say that at the end of the first race, when he dropped his well-earned trophy, it was a sight to behold. I might link down in the description below. That is quite a sight to behold. Rahal Letterman Lanigan Racing, just not the weekend for them. Even though James Jake showed pace in qualified 5th for the first race before getting an engine penalty, we're putting back 10 places to 15th, and he finished 12th in that first race. Graham Rahal, incident with Vautier, not his fault. And then in the second race, yeah, Jake's just lost it over the curves. It seemed to too much curve, took too much pace into that, or too much speed, and yeah, just went into the wall. And Rahal was just stuck in the midfield. He just generally didn't have pace in that race, it seemed. And finally, Alex Tagliani and Panther Racing as well. So Alex Tagliani first, good pace for them this weekend in the Barracuda and the Brian Hoser machine. Good top 10 in the second race. Should have got a top 10 in the first race, but he made a mistake when passing someone. Got on the power too early, and yeah, just poor mistake from Tags. And it really sums up his year, that first race, where he got good pace, but then something happens. But thankfully in the second race it didn't, and it actually worked for him to get into that top 10 position. At Panther, Ryan Briscoe in the first race, not bad considering the lack of time he has in the car. But he was stuck in that mid-pack, and of course he got caught up in that Justin Wilson incident with Charlie Kimball, and fractured his right wrist, which is actually affecting his American Le Mans Series Championship. And guess who's replacing him? Mike Conway in that level 5 motorsports machine in the LMP2 class. And then Carlos Munoz was 17th in the second race. Considering he was just jumped into the car at that morning. Very good job from the young man. Very professional job from him, and needing the Indy lights. I'm sure we'll see him on the IndyCar grid full time maybe next year. But that is the winners and losers from this Toronto round. Let's talk about of the race. Okay, this might be the shortest of the race ever. Driver of the race, or driver of the weekend, Scott Dixon. Team of the weekend, Chip Ganassi Racing. Overtake of the weekend from Charlie Kimball, Chip Ganassi Racing. In the second race, round the outside of Joseph Newgarden, around that 40 I believe. Went round the outside for 12th. Newgarden defending the inside, Kimball round the outside, and got the inside for turn 4, and they wheel to wheel as well. Great pass from Kimball. So that is of the race, and that is power oversteer for this Honda Indy Toronto. 2 races in the weekend, great 2 races. The crowd looked a bit better than last year as well. More people showed up, and very encouraging for IndyCar, even if the trophy manufacturers can't help Sebastian Bourdais hold one at the end of the first race. But yeah, I hope you have enjoyed this. Again, I apologise for the delay in this review, but I'll be back with previews of Mid-Ohio, where again Scott Dixon does very well, and in F1 we do have Hungary again after these long driver tests which just happened. And yeah, hopefully the tyres are much better, and it seems like they are. It seems like everyone's happy with the tyres now. But until then, sign out for watching. So till next time, cheerio.